everyone, thanks for stopping by today. Stampin' Georgia here, stampingeorgia.com, and I am really excited to share a really simple watercolor wash with you today. I've used it on these two cards and just done a simple watercolor wash using two colors on each, using my aqua painter ink refill, and it's done on the shimmery white cardstock. So come on, let's get started and I'll show you how. So here are both cards again. The color combination that I've used here is Flirty Flamingo with crushed curry, and then of course black is my accent. And then on this one I have used the new Highland Heather and Pear Pizzazz, and Pear Pizzazz is my accent behind my watercolor. So what I'm going to start with is a piece of the shimmery white, which is by far my favorite to work on. And the two that I just showed you both were done on the shimmery white. I love because it's a little bit more forgiving when you're a newer watercolor person than watercolor paper, because watercolor paper tends to soak up the ink and the pigment right away. And so I'm just starting with this piece that is 3 5/8 by 4 by 4 7/8. And I know some of you are like, that's crazy that you're using those 1/8 inches, but those measurements are on your cutter, and it's a good thing to challenge yourself and try something different. So what I'm doing is I'm turning my paper. To make this easier, I put several drops of Pear Pizzazz and Highland Heather in these two little vessels in my little watercolor palette, and I'm going in with my aqua painter, and I want it to be good and wet so you can see that I've got plenty of moisture there, and I pull the color out toward the top so I don't have that intense color right from the get-go. And I'm just going to make large strokes and work my way to the corner. And you can always add color, but you can't erase color once you put it on. And so that's why I start with less, and I can go back and do more. Then I'm going to clean my brush off, and I'm just using a piece of paper towel and just going to get rid of the Pear Pizzazz on my aqua painter. Then I'm going to pick up my second color, and I'm going to do the same thing. Go down in and then pull it up toward the top so it's not so intense. And again, I'm going to make big strokes. I can always go add some more. And then of course you're going to want to let this dry a little bit. And I'm just going to show you, because I did do the same idea on watercolor paper. Here you can see the two. Of course, one has shimmers and one doesn't, but there's more texture in watercolor paper. But I just wanted you to see the difference in working in the two. Both are simple, but one just requires a little bit more work. You can also, if you get more water than you wanted, you can just take that paper towel and dab it off. And then to speed up the process of drying, you can simply take your heat tool if you want to, and it will just flatten out your paper and take the moisture out. And I'm thinking, while I'm looking at that before I set it aside, I'm actually going to add a little bit more of the Highland Heather so that it shows up good all the way up to the corner. And I'll set that aside to dry. So I'm going to take my aqua painter and get all of the color off of it. And you want your aqua painter to be good and juicy. So now I'm working with watercolor paper. There's texture in my watercolor paper, and I am going to wet my watercolor paper first because it soaks up the color so quickly. So if you don't wet it first, you will end up not being able to move your color. It will just soak right in. So again, I'm going to do the same thing with my little palette. You could do this in the lids of your ink pads as well. You can either put the drops of ink or just squeeze your lid. And again, you can see it's much wetter, but it's really important that you start with a wet piece of watercolor paper before you start doing this. And again, I like to make just the same movement every single time. Cleaning off the green off my aqua painter. And if I don't, if I can do that by just turning my paper rather than having to turn my body or my arm or my brush. And again, you can see how easy it is to spread when your paper is wet. Spread that color. And then, of course, same thing. You would want to set that aside and let it dry. And let that paper soak in. You can also use your heat tool on the watercolor paper. And so, to show you the finished one again, I've just made my mat 1/8 of an inch larger than my paper that I did the watercolor on. Stamped with the Dandelion Wishes stamp set. It was the first one that caught my eye in the new catalog. I love the font and the greetings in it. And I used, I'll just show you what I did. I just did Versamark tone on tone around the outside to give my little colored background, or not colored, but printed background before I added my watercolor image. And then I just used one of the jewels from the new, and I had a pack sitting here. Here they are. Faceted dots. They come in 4 different colors, and I used a black one, the medium-sized one, in the center. So there you have it, a fast and easy watercolor wash. Here's the other color combination again in Flirty Flamingo and Crushed Curry. I hope you'll give this watercolor wash idea a try.